we're here with Marya Sonny, who is an anesthesiologist, and today we're just going to learn about what she does and why she does it.
Okay, thanks for having me, Polly.
Of course. So first, we kind of just want to know, why'd you go into medicine, and what about anesthesiology really stood out and made you want to pursue anesthesiology?
So great question. I went into medicine because I wanted a job where I could help people, and I was lucky enough to be good at science and math and the things that you needed to do to go to medical school. And, culturally, my parents are Indian, so they kind of were guiding me along that way.
Yeah.
And in terms of anesthesia, when I got to medical school and I was doing clinical rotations, I found that I got more satisfaction from being in like an acute care setting versus a chronic care setting like a clinic and just seeing people over and over. I liked the fact that in anesthesia you could work with your hands and do procedures, and you got to sort of have a really positive impact on somebody's life.
Yeah, incredible. So, what do you do day to day, and can you describe your job a little bit on, your daily tasks?
Yeah, sure. So anesthesia is putting people to sleep for surgery. The other more important part about anesthesia is waking people up from anesthesia at the end of surgery and making sure they survive the surgery. So, my days start early. I work in the hospital exclusively. So our OR starts at 7:30. So I get there around 6:45 to set up the operating room and get all my drugs and equipment ready. Then I'll go talk to the patient, get a history and physical, explain the anesthesia to them. Then I'll meet the surgeon and we'll kind of talk about the plan and if there are any special needs for this person for their surgery. And then, then we bring the patient to the operating room, we give them the anesthesia, they do the surgery. I could have days where I'm doing one long surgery. The whole day starts at 7:30, ends at 5.
Yeah.
Or I could have a day where there's 3 to 4 smaller surgeries. So
wow, so every day is different,
right? And that's part of the nice thing about anesthesia is every patient's different, and every day is different, a different set of challenges, different kinds of patients.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good. So leading into my next question, what do you enjoy about your work? What are your daily joys? What do you look forward to?
Like I said, I think the thing that I found as I get older or whatever in the profession longer is, you have patients who are coming at sort of a very scary time in their life, right? They have some kind of diagnosis that needs surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They're nervous about it. They're scared about it. And you get to be one of the people that kind of talks to them and puts them at ease and helps them through this difficult time. And, depending on the surgery that you're doing, you're actually part of the team that's could save this person's life. And that's incredibly rewarding, and so that's a good thing, And then I like the other things I like are sort of more practical for me and my personality, in that it's okay, I go to work and I work really hard and I'm really focused when I'm there during the surgery, but anesthesia, the type of anesthesia I do is the kind where once the surgery's over and the patient's all good in the recovery room, when I go home, no one's calling me for oh, I need a prescription for, my blood pressure medicine, or I have a headache and what should I do?
Yeah.
So when I'm there and I'm working, it's very intense and involved. But when I'm home, my free time is my free time.
Nice. Yeah. So just on the other hand, what things about your work frustrate you and maybe don't look forward to as much?
Yeah. No, there are definitely good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And I think, along with this sort of ability to be there and take care of people during this sort of critical time period of their life, it's a big responsibility. When they're in the operating room, their life sort of hangs in the balance of what the anesthesiologist and the surgeon are doing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a huge responsibility. So if things go wrong in the OR, it can be very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time it turns out good. Sometimes it doesn't turn out good, and that's really not good.
Yeah.
It's kind of it can be stressful at times, but most of the time we're prepared and ready and handle it. The other things are sometimes you have to work as a team in the operating room. So you have a nurse and you have scrub techs and you have the surgeon. And my best days are when I get along with everybody in the OR and like I'm friends with the surgeon and the surgeon's communicating properly and the surgeon's very skilled and the nurses are good. You know, you have different sort of skill levels, and so it's frustrating if somebody is not a good team player or a good communicator. So I think that's what people don't realize, is that everybody's like working together.
Yeah,
so.
It's like a team.
Yeah.
It's a sport.
Right, yeah, sort of like a sport.
Yeah. And then my next question is, were there any expectations that you went into having about your career that turned out to be way different from what you're doing now?
I mean, I think it's interesting. Like when you go to medical school and you do your sort of rotation of anesthesia, you're kind of like this protected person as the medical student, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh, these are all the cool, great things we do. And no one really shows you like the harder parts of it. So I think in terms of things I wasn't expecting, like the way medicine's sort of heading now is you have a lot of these private equity groups that are buying medical practices, and it's not like the doctors are sort of losing control of their schedule and what they can do if their group gets bought up, right? It's sort of like, okay, now, you know, I don't have a direct example for anesthesia, but say you're in like a primary care and some group buys you, they're like, oh, you now have to see minimum 10 patients a day and we can control your schedule. So I didn't know that as a medical student, that was like something that would be happening, that there are sort of these higher forces above the doctors
management,
that are sort of, right, controlling your sort of your output, I guess.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I guess kind of going into that, what are some positives and negatives working in a hospital group or something bought out by a bigger managed company, other than compared to owning your own practice and having control over your own practice?
Yeah, I mean, as an anesthesiologist, I've only ever worked in a hospital. So I've been in like a private practice group, and the benefits of that is the group usually has some structure where they're paying your malpractice and they're paying for your licensing, and like a lot of the day-to-day sort of clerical stuff I don't have to do. The other parts are, I have never been in an anesthesia group that got bought out. So I don't know, luckily for me, I don't know what that's like. But I've heard from other people who have been in groups like that where they kind of then control your salary. So I think that makes people frustrated. And they're kind of like, okay, like we've decided now that we are going to pay all the anesthesiologists this amount of money. And it's usually a lower amount than what they were making before they got bought out.
Yeah.
Some people will get like, you know, if you're a very senior member or a founding member of the group, they'll be like, oh, well, because we're buying your company, we'll give you this sort of lump sum amount. But everybody else who's below that gets, you know, this new salary and new hours and new call schedules. So you have all these people sort of controlling that. And luckily I haven't been in that situation yet. So. Yeah. But I think people are frustrated because that is sort of the way a lot of things in medicine are leaning now.
I see. So I guess, what advice would you give to somebody who's going to be in your position in maybe 15, 20 years time or things like that? What advice do you have in regards to your career and, any guidance to those?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for medicine, you have to make sure that you really like it, right? Like, I think that I work with some people who are kind of frustrated about being in medicine and some of the changes that have been happening, and it's kind of like, well, if you're just interested in like making money and you're a hard worker, there are probably other faster, less frustrating ways to do that potentially, right? Like you basically, for medicine, like you better make sure you like being around sick people and taking care of people, and that you really like what you're doing. I mean, I think that's the most important thing, because it's a long road, right? Like between college, medical school, residency, you know, that's a long period of time. So it's a big investment. So you should make sure that it's something that you really want to do. You know, that said, if that's what you've decided, I think getting into, you know, medical school and college is competitive. So everyone's sort of getting their stuff early on.
Yeah.
But I think, doing what you're doing is great, like talking to people about it and seeing if they like it and what they like and what they don't like, and keep an open mind. I kind of feel like some kids are, like, oh, I got to be a doctor or I got to be a lawyer. But, there's like a million other jobs out there.
Yeah.
And even there are doctors who don't practice clinical medicine, right? So some doctors go on to be hospital administrators. Some of them go on to do research. Some of them do other things. So, I think it's, I would say explore it. Make sure you know that you really want to do it. Make sure, keep all your options open.
Yeah.
And figure out what you really enjoy once you get into medicine, and just ask a lot of questions.
And then final question. Looking back, what would you tell your 18 or 20-year-old self in regards to your career?
I think I'm pretty lucky in that I picked anesthesia, and I kind of am very happy with it.
Yeah.
So, but when I was 18 or 20, I didn't know I wanted to do anesthesia. So, I kind of figured it out in medical school. And even then, it was kind of like, I matched for an anesthesia spot, and I was like, I hope I like this, because I've only done like one rotation, and I liked other things when I was doing medical school, and this was the one that I just thought would be the best fit. So, yeah, I don't know what advice I would give myself at 18 to 20 years old. Probably, it turned out, for whatever I did, turned out pretty okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I could have always worked harder. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
fair
fine.
enough.
I kind of feel like I'm the opposite of the advice I gave myself, because my parents were kind of very much pushing me into medicine.
Yeah.
I feel like 18 to 20-year-old me did not investigate a lot of other options.
Okay.
So, like, I've told people, I was like, well, maybe I could have been an astronaut or a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, but I didn't know enough to investigate any of that, because medicine can be a very straight track, right? It's very much, you go to college, you take these pre-med classes, you study for your MCAT, you apply to college, and, that's a lot to do in medical school. So there's not a ton of time to explore other opportunities. There are, but I just didn't take them, because I was like, well, I guess I'll just be a doctor. And then you go to medical school, and then that's really busy. And then after medical school, it's like, okay, now the next thing is your internship and then your residency. So it's like, once you're on that track, very few people deviate from the track to go explore other options. So I think probably for me, I would have personally told myself, like, you should look into other things. Luckily it turned out okay. But again, like I said, I don't know what other things I could have been doing. So kind of looking back, I'm probably, I don't know what other doctors have been saying on your podcast, but for me, it's sort of like, maybe there were other things. But I'm lucky in that I do like what I do. So,
Well, that's amazing.
I made some okay decisions on the way. But that's basically it.
Well, that's all. And thank you so much. I've learned so much.
Oh, great.
And I think one of my main takeaways was just to explore and to not take one experience for granted, and kind of explore my options. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Of course, anytime. I enjoy being on your podcast.